Eamon Lynch joining us. And Eamon, you've been a very outspoken critic of the PIF and LIV Golf. You have not been afraid to put those words to paper and on screen here on Golf Channel. What was your reaction to the news today?
Well, I think the statements you've just cited there from various parties in the game are evidence that while morality does not trump money when it comes to business, that people and individuals can take a stand and can have a view on certain issues, but that's not the basis on which power brokers tend to make decisions. And it's not insignificant that the PGA Tour had Jimmy Dunn conduct some of these meetings and be a part of the board of this new entity, because Jimmy is at heart a Wall Street guy, and Wall Street guys are not prone to stand on human rights sentiments at all. And ultimately, it's been part of a drift that I've sensed in conversations from power brokers in the game over the last few months, where the issue was where the money was going. The issue has never actually been where the money is coming from. It's simply a desire to redirect the money to themselves rather than reject it outright on the basis of human rights abuses or where the source of the financing comes from.
Eamon, do you see this as a PGA Tour capitulation?
Absolutely. It's an amoral about-face by the PGA Tour and its leadership. And let's be clear here, they were cheerfully, if they did not actively recruit 9/11 families, they were happy to hide behind them. They were happy to hide behind the grieving family of Jamal Khashoggi. They were basically happy to hide behind human rights organizations that have protested Saudi abuses until it time to burrow their noses into the trough themselves. And I think they've been essentially worked into a position, including by their own membership, with these high purses, where the PGA Tour needed financing somewhere. And that financing was offered by the Saudis. And in a way, it's a little bit of a face-saving measure for the Saudis, because this doesn't represent a victory for the LIV Golf concept, because the PGA Tour had essentially won this war. The LIV legal exposure in the United States, particularly Yasser Al-Rumayyan's discovery liabilities in federal court, were a great concern to them. Their product was essentially dead in the sense that it had no audience traction whatsoever. It had no viewership. And the PGA Tour had secured the loyalties of the key players who remained. But again, there is a group of people within the game, quite vocal, including in the governing bodies, who wished the money to remain within the golf ecosystem and just figure out how they could get their share of it. To do that, they needed the PGA Tour to capitulate in the manner that they have.
Eamon, we've discussed with a number of different panelists today the timing of the announcement and how it felt a little bit rushed. The fact that PGA Tour players, big-name players, were saying they were blindsided. They had no idea about this. They learned about it on Twitter. It's being reported by our Todd Lewis. Tiger Woods didn't know about it until this morning. Do you get the impression, is there a sense that maybe this was rushed because the story was about to be leaked? It felt like it was a little speedy.
I'm not so sure it was about to be leaked, as opposed to the incentive they all have to try to reach a solution on this, particularly the Saudis in terms of legal exposure, and the PGA Tour, because there are parties in the PGA Tour who've been fearful about the mounting legal bills over the last year or two of litigation. So I don't know that the timing's particularly suspicious in this sense, but what it does indicate is that pretty much every statement that you've heard over the last couple of years from the PGA Tour, from Jay Monahan, from Keith Pelley, and certainly from the LIV executives, was a matter of tactics. It certainly wasn't a matter of principle.
Eamon, I'm curious if you've had any conversations with folks at the PGA Tour, any sense of the reaction in the hallways in Ponte Vedra Beach?
I haven't talked to anyone at the PGA Tour about this. I did actually get a text from a former PGA Tour executive, and all it said simply was, "I am heartbroken." And this is not someone who himself is prone to stand on sentiment about human rights versus commerce. But ultimately, there's a face-saving measure for the Saudis here, having a product that wasn't successful. They had money to invest. And frankly, a lot of people look at this from the standpoint of a commercial lens. They don't care about the morality of who they're dealing with. It's simply, is it good for their business or is it bad for their business? And these are people who are prone to thinking that if someone is offering them money, then how could that possibly be bad for their business. But Jay Monahan ought to be asked, when he says that this was a transformational deal and that it's so positive and forward moving of the game of golf, if it is so positive, why were the members in a member-led organization not told about it? Why was it constructed in the shadows? Why is there something shameful about it if it is actually so positive a deal for the PGA Tour? And those are questions I'm guessing he's being asked now during that players' meeting in Canada.
Why do you think it was so secretive and kept under cloak and dagger?
Because I think they've made a decision that they, like the players who initially went to LIV last year, they're going to have to brazenly ride out the criticism here. I mean, the PGA Tour, in court documents, has talked about how unsavory the Saudi characters are and about human rights abuses and misogyny. And all of those things have been now cast aside. All of the alliances they had attempted to cultivate with human rights groups and 9/11 families, people like that, they can't address any of that now. And had it been part of a conversation in public that they were thinking about moving away towards this kind of settlement of this dispute, I think they would have been absolutely spit roasted in terms of the criticism of it. So they made an absolutely calculated decision, not even to tell their own members, much less engage in a public discussion about it.
Knowing what you know about the structure of the PGA Tour, Eamon, how tight do you think the circle was during these meetings? Jay Monahan and who else was even aware of these meetings taking place?
I think it was very clearly a tiny circle, because even if you look at it from the LIV side of it, guys, the fact that Greg Norman, who's now being disappeared out of the scene as well, he wasn't even aware of it, and he was the CEO of LIV Golf. I think it was an extraordinarily small group of people, and I've talked to representatives of a couple of the top players, and they found out about it as the news broke this morning as well. So I think you have a situation here potentially where even the players who assisted Jay Monahan in terms of architecting this new PGA Tour at that Delaware meeting last summer were kept in the dark until the last possible moment. And leaving aside the fact that you've got all of these players, the elite guys, who are now going to be saying, well, why didn't I take the money and get recycled back into the ecosystem a year later with no damage done? What is the reputational stain that Jay Monahan and the PGA Tour have now put on players who actively lobbied on behalf of the PGA Tour quite vocally and said that they had loyalty, they had issues with where the money was coming from, and now they're being told, well, actually, no, we're actually getting into bed with these folks as well. So I think there are going to be a lot of relationships that need repaired in this, and this meeting in Canada is probably not going to do much to contribute towards that. I would expect it's going to be a fairly fractious get-together.
Eamon, what about for Phil Mickelson? In what ways does today's news kind of rehabilitate or resuscitate his image?
It really doesn't, in the sense that people have chosen their sides on Phil Mickelson some time ago, and Phil will be doing a victory lap as though, you know, being an amoral stooge for murderers is something to be proud of. And he has been proud of that over the last year, and at least he's chosen his position on that. I don't think it really affects anyone's view of him. The view that was formed of Phil a year ago, and particularly a man who said quite explicitly and on the record that the murder of gays, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist, and sundry human rights abuses were not a deal breaker for him. So I don't necessarily know how that reputation could be rehabilitated at this point or even further damaged.
Those players that that were not as outspoken, but instead made the decision primarily because of financial opportunity. Harold Varner III, I'm thinking about right here, who was point blank saying, I can do things with this money that can make a difference, and I'll never have this opportunity. Are they any more or less off the hook? Is it any easier or harder for them to make their way back onto the main stage in the golf ecosystem?
I think the PGA Tour and the European Tour as well, with its former players, are clearly going to rehabilitate and recycle these guys into the mainstream again, which I think was always part of whatever happened. Even if there had been no deal reached and LIV had simply folded up as tent, I've written and argued in the past that was always likely to happen and probably should happen. I don't necessarily think it removes the obligation from those guys in the sense that they made a willing decision to to become sports washers for the Saudi regime, and they were happy with it. At least Harold Varner, to his credit, as with a couple of others, was very clear in saying, I did this for the money. He didn't trot out some kind of grow the game nonsense, and he certainly didn't do what Phil Mickelson did in terms of being an abject apologist for this regime. I don't necessarily think it gets them off the hook. Well, all we've done now is gone from a situation where there were individuals who were acting as pawns for the Saudi regime. Now, thanks to the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, the entire sport is now reduced to being a platform for these folks.
Eamon, I'm curious, what role did the great play of Phil Mickelson and Brooks Koepka at the Masters play? Brooks Koepka winning the PGA Championship, seeing players on the PGA Tour and LIV play practice rounds together in major championships. What role did that play in bringing us to this day?
None whatsoever, I think, because it was always accepted that there were at least a handful of players on the LIV Tour who were competitively relevant. I mean, they already had a major champion in Cam Smith, who had a great future ahead of him. And some personal relationships have very much survived the fracturing of the game. Brooks Koepka has always been a fairly popular guy in the locker room, even after he left for LIV. So the fact that other players would congratulate him on an accomplishment that they would all like to have themselves isn't that surprising. I don't think the personal relationships between individual players was much of a factor. In some cases, it had soured, particularly in the wake of the litigation last summer, but a lot of relationships had survived, and a lot of players who were on the LIV Tour, among all the washed-up guys, there were still players out there who were competitively relevant. But I don't think their performance as such had much to do with bringing this deal about. I think it is more to do with two elements, which is the Saudis needing a face-saving measure and people who are happy to be money grubbers for the Saudi money, willing to give them that out.
As the golf media reacts to this news, Eamon, I'm seeing two stories in equal parts. I'm seeing one story that says it's a huge victory for LIV, for the golf series. I'm seeing another story that says LIV as we know it is going to go away. This is the beginning of the end of that particular league, of that particular format. Which one do you think is closer to the truth?
I think in a PR sense, it will be perceived as a victory for LIV. But in practical terms, it seems more likely to be a death warrant for it, because it's not going to be a competitive tour to the PGA Tour, which was obviously the initial goal. It strikes me that there are so many unknowns in this situation right now with that it's easier to speculate than it is to say anything with any kind of authority. There aren't many windows, as Rex Hoggard pointed out earlier, there are not many windows in the schedule where LIV would seem to be an easy fit. Maybe it's just the team component that exists rather than any kind of individual format going forward. It's all very hard to say. It will certainly be trotted out as a victory for LIV, but all of the bots and trolls that are essentially the audience of LIV, none of them have noted that, as you did earlier, that this is essentially a deal between the Saudi Investment Fund and the PGA Tour, DP World Tour. It doesn't suggest that LIV itself, in its current form, has a particularly long lifespan ahead of it.
Eamon, for some of our viewers, you introduced the term sports washing about a year ago, this idea of individuals or groups using sports to distract from human rights abuses. 15, 20 years from now, when we look back at this day, is that what this was at the end of the day, a sports washing exercise? This and ultimately that's what the game is now going to be accused of, and not without some merit as well. I mean, I saw in this interview Jay Monahan did earlier on CNBC, sitting next to Yasser Al-Rumayyan, who's the bagman for Mohammed bin Salman, he said that people will react in 10 years, and that's the reaction that we ought to judge things on. And at that point, people will have smiles on their faces. Well, tell that to September 11th families, or tell that to Jamal Khashoggi's fiancée, or to the people who are currently under the boot of the PGA Tour's new business partner. I mean, it's an argument that doesn't carry much water when you have been actively raising concerns yourself about the source of the funding. The hostility to this, in one level, internally within the game, will be just people upset about the about face of the PGA Tour. In other aspects from the players, it will be they're upset because they weren't informed, they weren't kept in the loop. This has not gone through any of the established
procedures of how a business proposition of this scale would work its way up through the PGA Tour's kind of authority from the players upward. But outside of the game, there's going to be a great deal of upset by people who simply object to it on moral grounds and never saw it as anything commercial but purely a moral issue.